On March 28th, the USS Tripoli arrived in the U.S. Central Command Area of Responsibility, 850 feet long, an America-class amphibious assault ship carrying 3,500 sailors and Marines from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit with the USS New Orleans and USS San Diego alongside it, F-35B stealth fighters in the hangar deck, MV-22 Osprey tiltrotor aircraft on the flight deck, H-1Z Viper attack helicopters, H-53E Sea Stallion heavy lift helicopters, landing craft capable of putting armored vehicles directly onto a beach, every asset the United States needs for a ship-to-shore assault, positioned in the Persian Gulf. 2 weeks before that, on March 13th, the U.S. Air Force had already spent 2 hours bombing Kharg Island. 90 military targets destroyed, mine storage facilities, missile bunkers, surface-to-air missile systems. The Mersad Air Defense Battery, Iran's domestically built copy of the American Hawk missile, hit and silenced. Trump posted on Truth Social that U.S. forces had totally obliterated every military target on the island, then added that he had decided not to destroy the oil infrastructure for reasons of decency, then warned if Iran keeps blocking the Strait of Hormuz, he would reconsider. So the question almost nobody is answering precisely is the one that actually matters. Why didn't they just take the island? The air defenses were gone. The Marines were offshore. The 82nd Airborne Division had been ordered to deploy. Senior U.S. officials were privately telling counterparts in Israel and the Gulf states that a ground operation may be unavoidable. Trump told the Financial Times the United States could take control of Iran's oil by occupying Kharg Island and called it Iran's crown jewel. They still have not taken it. And the answer to why tells you more about modern amphibious warfare, Iranian military doctrine, and the limits of American military power than anything you will read in a press release. By the end of this video, you will understand 3 things. First, what Kharg Island actually is, the infrastructure, the geography, the numbers, and why Trump called it Iran's crown jewel. Second, exactly how the U.S. military would execute a ship-to-shore assault on a defended island 20 miles from the Iranian coast in 2026. Third, why every serious defense analyst who has looked at this operation closely has concluded that seizing Kharg could be a trap of America's own making, and why Iran itself might be hoping the U.S. makes that decision. Start with what the island actually is, because most people hear small island and picture something manageable. Kharg is not manageable in any sense of that word. The island is roughly 8 kilometers long and 4 kilometers wide, about 1/3 the size of Manhattan. It sits in the northern Persian Gulf, approximately 20 miles off the Iranian coast, near the port city of Bandar Imam Khomeini. That 20-mile number will come back repeatedly in this video because it is the distance between every American soldier on the island and every Iranian weapon system on the mainland. The oil infrastructure on Kharg is what makes it irreplaceable. More than 50 crude storage tanks holding over 34 million barrels. Loading terminals that can service 8 to 10 supertankers simultaneously. Design capacity of up to 7 million barrels per day. Deep water access on all sides. The only natural harbor in the northern Gulf deep enough to accommodate the world's largest tankers. The crude does not originate on the island. It arrives through pipelines from Iran's largest oil fields in the southwestern mainland and is loaded here for export. 90% of Iran's oil exports leave through Kharg. 90%. Before this war, Iran was exporting roughly 1.5 million barrels per day. At current prices, that is approximately $150 million every 24 hours, flowing through a strip of coral 8 kilometers long. China is the primary buyer. Iranian oil accounts for about 11.6% of China's total seaborne oil imports. When Trump says Kharg is Iran's crown jewel, he is not being theatrical. He is describing the single node through which the Iranian government funds everything it does. Remove Kharg, and the Iranian regime's cash flow stops within weeks. During the Iran-Iraq War from 1980 to 1988, Iraq understood this and bombed Kharg repeatedly. The strikes were not token raids. Iraqi jets flew deep into Iranian airspace at serious risk to hit the terminal again and again, across multiple years of sustained air campaign. The terminal was damaged, briefly taken offline, and then rebuilt and returned to operation each time. Workers repaired pipelines under threat of follow-on strikes. Iran demonstrated an institutional capacity to keep Kharg functioning under sustained attack that surprised everyone who had assumed one serious bombing campaign would end the problem. Iran temporarily shifted some exports to smaller facilities at Kharg Island and Kharg Island when Kharg was damaged. Those facilities can process roughly 200,000 barrels per day combined. Kharg processes 1.5 million. The fallback exists, but it does not come close to replacing the primary hub. The lesson Saddam Hussein learned over 8 years of targeting Kharg is that bombing it is painful for Iran, but does not stop it. You have to hold it, and holding it is a different problem entirely. Now look at what the U.S. military would actually do if the order came. The operation begins before any Marine sets foot on the island. CENTCOM has had Kharg under near constant overhead surveillance since the early weeks of the war. Satellite imagery, reconnaissance drones, electronic intercepts. The U.S. military can see every new defensive position the Iranians establish, every trench line, every newly moved man-pad team, every area where the ground has been disturbed in patterns consistent with mine-laying. That intelligence picture is the foundation on which the assault plan is built. Phase 1 is suppression. F-35. B stealth fighters launching from the USS Tripoli, along with Air Force strike aircraft flying from land bases in the region, would hit every remaining Iranian defensive position on the island. Not the oil infrastructure, that is the objective, not the target. Everything else, the man pads, the Oerlikon anti-aircraft guns, any reinforced positions, any communications infrastructure. Apache helicopter gunships would work the coastline at low altitude, specifically looking for drone launching positions. At the same time, AI-enabled reconnaissance drones would map the beach approaches in real time, identifying the weak points in the coastal defense perimeter, the areas where Iranian defensive density is lowest, and where a landing craft or Osprey approach has the best chance of establishing a foothold without meeting immediate concentrated fire. Phase 2 is the assault itself. The MV-22 Osprey is the key platform. It takes off from the USS Tripoli like a helicopter and transitions to fixed-wing flight, meaning it can move at 280 miles per hour and does not need a runway to land. Marines exit from the rear ramp directly onto the island, multiple Ospreys approaching from different vectors simultaneously, each dropping a small force at different landing zones, splitting the Iranian defenders' attention and preventing a concentrated response to any single approach. While the Ospreys insert the first Marines vertically, amphibious assault vehicles launch from the ships and drive themselves through the water to the beach, carrying heavier weapons. The LAV-25 wheeled armored vehicle with its 25mm cannon, mortars, 155mm howitzers, anti-tank missiles. The ship-to-shore movement is not a single wave. It is a coordinated multi-axis assault designed to be inside the Iranian defensive response time before that response can be organized. The 82nd Airborne provides a third axis. Paratroopers jumping from C-17 aircraft could land on the island's interior away from the beach, severing any Iranian force that is defending the coastline from any Iranian force in the center of the island. Retired Marine Colonel Mark Kanshin of the Center for Strategic and International Studies described the force package directly. You would have lots of things coming together to protect the Marines while they get ashore. Retired Vice Admiral Kevin Donegan, former commander of the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet, assessed the mission as absolutely executable. The air defenses have been degraded. The amphibious capability is offshore and ready. The operation to take Kharg is militarily executable. The question is, what happens the morning after? Here is the problem that every serious analyst keeps arriving at. Kharg Island is 20 miles from the Iranian coast. 20 miles. The Iranian coastline is mountainous. Drones can fly through mountain passes at low altitude and appear on American radar with seconds of warning time, not minutes. Ballistic missiles from the mainland reach the island in under 2 minutes. Iranian multiple launch rocket systems, the kind of artillery that has reshaped the battlefield in Ukraine, can hit the island with rocket-assisted projectiles from the mainland. And the IRGC has spent years producing FPV drones, the small first-person view attack drones that have been used by the millions on the Ukraine battlefield, precisely because they are cheap, difficult to detect at low altitude, and devastating against personnel in fixed positions. War on the Rocks, in an analysis published on April 8th, stated this directly. Iran still has plenty of firepower on the mainland that can easily reach the island with a high level of precision and lethality, enhanced by Russian targeting and intelligence support. Russia is providing Iran with satellite targeting data. That means Iranian ballistic missiles and drone strikes on Kharg are not being guided by Iranian surveillance alone. They are being guided by Russian military intelligence assets that have been tracking American force movements in the Gulf throughout this conflict. An American force occupying Kharg Island would be a stationary target 20 miles from the Iranian coast, under constant threat of drone and missile attack, with Russian targeting data feeding the weapons aimed at it, indefinitely. Not for a day, not for a week, for however long it takes Iran to agree to reopen the strait on American terms. And Iran, which has already been losing for 3 months and has not agreed to open the strait, has given no indication that watching Marines occupy Kharg would change that calculation faster than the economic blockade already running. There is a deeper strategic problem that the FDD Foundation's analysis identified in March. If Iran does not want to destroy the oil infrastructure on Kharg, because that infrastructure is its own primary revenue source and rebuilding it would cost billions and take years, then Iran has a reason to exercise restraint in what it strikes on the island. Ballistic missiles, drones, FPV attacks, all can be targeted to hit American personnel and equipment without destroying the oil terminals and storage tanks. That means American troops on Kharg are not shielded by the value of the asset they are protecting. They are exposed on an island that Iran wants to reclaim intact, which means Iran will fire at the Marines but not at the oil. The Marines cannot hide inside the oil tanks. There is no defensible perimeter on a flat coral island 8 kilometers long, with the Iranian coast visible on clear days from the northern shore. Michael Eisenstadt of the Washington Institute described the drone problem with precision. The coast is mountainous, so drones can come in through mountain passes where radar cannot pick them up. There is no warning time. And without warning time, the short-range defense systems protecting the Marines on the island cannot be cued to engage before the drone is already inside the defensive perimeter. Gulf allies privately told CNN they are urging Trump not to take the island. A senior Gulf official explained the calculation. Doing so would likely result in high casualties and a strong Iranian response against the Gulf states themselves. The moment American troops land on Kharg, the governments of the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Kuwait become potential targets for Iranian retaliation, not because they asked for it, but because their territory hosts the American bases from which the operation was launched. Every major U.S. airbase in the region, Al Udeid in Qatar, Al Dhafra in the UAE, Prince Sultan in Saudi Arabia, is within range of Iranian ballistic missiles. The Gulf states want the strait reopened. They do not want their oil infrastructure burning in exchange for an American flag on a coral island their populations cannot locate on a map. There is an alternative that multiple analysts have proposed as producing the same strategic outcome with far lower risk. An offshore blockade of ships leaving Kharg, not boots on the island, ships in the water, intercepting every tanker that loads Iranian crude at Kharg's terminals before it can exit the Gulf. The Iranian oil sits in storage. The revenue stops. The regime's cash flow dries up. No American soldier is sitting on an island 20 miles from a coast with ballistic missiles, Russian targeting data, and millions of FPV drones in reserve. Clayton Siegel of the Center for Strategic and International Studies called it a quarantine, seizing Iranian oil shipments exiting the Gulf rather than seizing the island itself. The blockade already in place around the Strait of Hormuz is the beginning of that logic. Taking it further would mean intercepting ships that loaded at Kharg before they clear the Gulf, regardless of flag. The oil goes nowhere. The terminals fill to capacity and stop receiving from the pipelines. The revenue stops just as completely as if Marines were standing on the dock, with 0 American troops in harm's way on the ground. The reason the island option has not been discarded entirely is that it is not really about military efficiency. It is about leverage and message. Occupying Kharg puts the United States in physical possession of the one asset Iran cannot function without. It is a bargaining chip with a flag planted on it and cameras broadcasting the image around the world. The offshore blockade achieves the same economic effect, but without the dramatic statement. And Trump, who told the Financial Times he could take control of Iran's oil by occupying the island, is not looking for a quiet economic solution. He is looking for a forcing mechanism that makes the negotiating dynamic impossible to ignore. A flag on Kharg is the kind of image that ends negotiations in hours, not weeks. That is the logic. The question is whether the logic holds when the cost of the image is measured in American casualties on a flat coral island with no cover and no margin for error. The problem is that the forcing mechanism cuts both ways. Iran cannot easily agree to American terms while American troops stand on Iranian soil. Every Iranian government since 1979 has operated under the doctrine that territorial concessions under military occupation cannot be made without regime collapse. Kharg is Iranian territory. Marines on Kharg is not a negotiating pressure point for Tehran. It is an existential political problem that makes any deal harder to reach, not easier. The War on the Rocks analysis concluded that a seizure and occupation would more likely expand and extend the war than deliver any decisive result. The USS Tripoli is still in the region. The 82nd Airborne is still deployed. The Marines are trained, positioned, and ready. The air defenses on Kharg have been degraded by 90 American airstrikes. CENTCOM has a current real-time surveillance picture of every defensive position on the island, updated by near-constant overhead coverage. The operational planning is done. The force is in position. The order has not been given. Whether it should be executed is the question that nobody in the planning rooms has answered in a way that closes the argument. So, here is the question. Is the Kharg Island seizure the forcing mechanism that ends this war on American terms, cutting off the last revenue source of a regime that has already lost its navy, its supreme leader, and its conventional military capability? Or is it the trap that extends a war America is winning from the air into a ground occupation that Iran can sustain from the mainland indefinitely, with Russian targeting data and millions of FPV drones as the weapon? Write forcing mechanism or the trap in the comments. The people who land on opposite sides of that line are about to have a serious argument under this video. We are reading every reply.